happy he didn't have enough players. He had enough players, but didn't want anyone else to get injured. And so he ended up forfeiting the game at halftime rather than put his girls at risk.
Senator Prentice?
So are you saying that biological women, girls, don't play sports in an aggressive nature, only men, only biological boys do?
That's not what I said.
Okay,
I
but you
said
just
there's a
said,
different tempo.
so what I hear is that boys are more aggressive than girls when playing sports. And,
When playing each other, there's a different tempo, is what I said.
okay,
Is that
Tempo
believe
to
me,
me is-
I've coached biological girls before. I've got some that are really tough, and they were great. They were very aggressive. But again, on average, the tempo in an all male sport, biological male sport versus an all biological female sport is different.
okay, follow up. So being that my background is, in medicine, I am not a doctor, but I have spent time working on preparing, even in New Hampshire, for evidence-based protocols for patient care. This is not patient care, but I was reading this article. This is how I got here. And I'd like to, before we're done today, read an email from a constituent of mine in Plymouth. But in reading, so from her email to me about her teammate led me to a New Hampshire Public Radio article about her teammate, which led me to some links from the American Academy, AMA, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and it also took me to a journal of, which was linked all in here. I didn't have to dig very far, of the Journal of, it's the Endocrine Society. And so it's fairness for transgender people in sport. And certainly, I'm not going to read the whole thing. And yes, I selected this one paragraph, but I'm happy to share it because it says there is a societal bias that superior athletic performance will be observed for transgender women who have gone through a typical male puberty in the past, even if they are treated with gender-affirming hormones afterward. However, existing peer-reviewed research for athleticism among transgender people is limited to small studies of sit-ups, push-ups, and medium distance running, which would be pretty tough for me. But it says so it suggests that, or medium distance running, which suggests athleticism that correlates broadly with current testosterone levels after some period of years. Notably, the data to date does not include evidence of athletic advantage from historical puberty among transgender women while on standard testosterone lowering regimes for multiple years. And it moves it to the final sentence, which just says, that there is not, the athletic disadvantage is basically been debunked in a peer-reviewed, and part of this is looking at peer-reviewed literature. So, I think unless there's other science, and I'd be happy to review what you have. This was, and again, it was a New Hampshire article about a Lakes Region child who's in my district that took me down this pathway to this. So I wanted to add that in. I don't know if you have any comments or questions back for me, and I'd be happy to try to answer them, but, and I'd be happy to share this article with you. And before we're done execing, I would like to read the email that I got from Rachel Pamplin about her teammate, Parker Terrell.
So again, follow up again. I think it was the Journal for Sports Medicine, or Sports Orthopedics or something like that. I can't remember the exact title of the article. Their study showed obviously that males have a biological advantage, a physiological advantage in sports, just one-on-one, biological male, biological female. I just turn to you and say that in Europe, they've stopped giving puberty blockers to children because of the risk factors associated with it. In the long term, the fact that it's not reversible according to their studies. And so I'm not going to encourage that in any way, shape, or form when we know that medicine, at least in Europe and in Sweden, including Sweden, they've stopped giving puberty blockers to children because of the long-term effects and the risk factors associated. That it's the emerging science is not to do that. And so we're not talking about, again, children on puberty blockers. We're talking about biological male to biological female, unmedicated. Physiologically, it's clear in medicine that males have a physiological advantage in sports through bone density, muscle density, and everything else. And so, again, my goal is to make sure that the other piece of this is about opportunity. I got a phone call from a parent in Moultonborough whose daughter does the high jump and actually was bumped from state trials because of the biological male from Kearsarge, who participated in females as a trans female. She was bumped because she was the one person on the roster that was the next one down. Had that transgender person not been participated, she's a senior. Now she doesn't have that opportunity to be able to do, which could make a difference in getting a D1, D2 type of scholarship, which limits the opportunity for biological females. And I'm not in favor of that. I think the whole purpose of Title IX, again, was to expand opportunities for females in sports to be able to get things like college scholarships. And that this bill seeks to equalize that playing field back and take away the physiological advantage of biological men.
Thank you. And Senator, it sounds like you're concerned about safety in sports. And if that is the cost, if that's the case, why don't we look at height caps or weight caps? I think there's way more nuanced ways to do this instead of saying, we have to check someone's birth certificate in order for them to play. It sounds like safety is the main issue. So why not just say, hey, there's a height cap or a weight cap on a certain sport?
You're missing the second half of the comment, which was also about opportunity, right? Making sure that biological women have the same opportunity as biological men. So again, it's about allowing them to participate at elite levels as a biological male or a biological female.
Follow up. I mean, we're not denying anyone's sports here. In my opinion, this bill is denying individual sports, and I'm really concerned about the enforcement of this as well. How do we determine someone's transgender? Because in my opinion, this bill is specifically targeted towards transgender youth. Remember, we are talking about children here, children under the age of 18 who just want to play sports. Now, how does the school determine who is transgender? What if their birth certificate is changed to female?
Thank you. If you read the bill again, it's the athlete's official birth certificate issued at or near the time of the athlete's birth, right? So when they were born, the birth certificate was issued, and whether it was male or female. And again, and you'll go through this when your kids hit public schools. One of the things you bring to the school is your birth certificate, and they'll document that, right? That they have your birth certificate when you register your child. So again, that information has already been provided to the school when you registered your student.
One more thing. I got a couple more things. I apologize. So, reading through this bill, we're including the college university system, which I don't remember them testifying at all on this bill for 375. And I think, in my opinion, this is a whole new bill in terms of we need to hear from them and their opinions on this. And the NCAA, I believe, sets these standards, not us as the legislature for this. So I think we have to hear from them in terms of that. And also, I'm concerned about the unconstitutionality of this bill. The New Hampshire Constitution says and commends in no uncertain terms that the state provide an education to all its citizens and that it supports all public schools. And the equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the state on account of race, creed, color, sex, or national origin. And we've already seen that the United States Supreme Court concluded in 2020 that discrimination based on homosexuality or its transgender status necessarily entails discrimination based on sex. In my opinion, this bill is unconstitutional.
That's your opinion.
That's my opinion. I got way more opinions too. I'll let Senator
And
Prentice speak.
because I have to go introduce a bill at 10:30, although it's fair to let everybody talk, I wanted to have a couple more things to add in. Senator Ward, is that okay?
You may speak.
Thank you very much, Senator Ward. So, I want to read something. Well, no, actually, first I want to comment on, actually, can I ask Senator Fenton a question?
You may.
Okay, so you talked about basically proof for identity, and actually Senator Lang talked about bringing a birth certificate to school. What's the standard going to be for standard of proof? Is there going to be just the birth certificate, or is there going to be a physical exam required?
According to the bill, it's just a birth certificate.
Just what birth certificate is in the bill, correct? But is that it? There's no physical exam required? Okay.
Nothing in this bill about that.
All right. Second, so I'll stop. Senator Fenton, you're all set. I'm not going to ask you a question. I'm just going to share from this NPR article that it says, in the State House, debates over school sports eligibility, Republican lawmakers have claimed, sorry to be partisan, but I'm going to hear, it's unfair and unsafe to let trans girls compete with other girls. Leading medical groups, including the American Medical Association and the American Academy of Pediatrics, have pushed back on such claims, saying it's not clear trans athletes have an inherent advantage. Medical professionals and civil rights groups have also warned that it's discriminatory to exclude trans kids from all benefits of participating in sports. And I will follow up on this to say, I don't have the testimony in front of me, but I remember Michelle Silly Fossey came to speak to us. She was a high school, I believe she ran track, and biological female, ran circles. She was a champion and routinely was able to actually outpace her male, the males at her same age. So she brought that forward as offering to us, like, here's this argument, but I'm a woman, biological woman, and I ran against biological men, and I was just fine on my own. So what are you really fighting for here?
Clear up one thing. So colleges were always, even the original bill, it was included. So just understand, it's not new to the amendment
In 375 or the other bill?
in 524. It's a whole conversation about biological sex in sports.
But this is a different bill. This is
Sure,
375. So it was not included in 375.
fair enough.
Before I run upstairs, can I read from Parker's email?
Okay.
And I will hand this over to our trustee aide, Pete, to go into the record. So it's actually not an email from Parker. It's an email from Rachel Pamplin from Plymouth. She said she is 15 years old and she attends Plymouth Regional High School. She's emailing me or you to talk about the upcoming bill that would be voted on tomorrow regarding trans rights for sports. Recently, one of my very close friends, Parker Terrell, was featured in a news article on New Hampshire Public Radio concerning the upcoming bill. The article was about her and her love for soccer. I've known Parker almost my entire life, and we are inseparable when we were younger. I played soccer with her when we were little, and I personally know how passionate she is about the sport. Soccer brings her so much joy, and I would be so devastated if that were to be taken away from her. I have attached an article for you to see if you haven't seen it already, which I hadn't, and it's what led me down the pathway to the AMA and the APA and the Journal of Endocrine Medicine. So if this bill is passed, it would only affect one of my dearest friends, but many, many others who fight for their rights as transgender athletes. It's so unfair and heartbreaking to think that someone could be so cruel to rob someone of their right to play a sport just because they were born into the wrong body. I really hope that you will vote against this bill, because voting for this will hurt me just as much as it will hurt Parker and all other transgender kids just trying to lead a normal life and continue doing the things that make them happy. She ends by saying that she loves Parker so much, she would hate to see her lose something that brings her so much joy. Please vote against this bill and many others like it. And in the article on NPR, it talks about how Parker hopes someday, and a very good soccer player, to get a scholarship, to play at a higher level. And I'm pretty proud of her, and I'm pretty proud of her classmates, her teammates, who are standing up and talking about this issue in a very evolved way. Thank you.
But you mentioned the woman who was, who ran circles around males, right?
That is Michelle Silly Fossey.
But that's, there's always, all females are not the same. They're not the same length, height, width, breadth, whatever, speed. And the same thing with males. But I think in a case like this, you generally have to look at who is generally the stronger person with the most muscle mass. I'm thinking about putting the 15-year-old running against a 5-year-old. obviously that person has an advantage because he or she is bigger and can run faster. And I think in this case, we have a stronger male, a stronger person with all kinds of attributes that generally women don't have. And to put that person in competition with a group of people that are lesser endowed, that I think is very unfair, and they're going to always win. I'm just thinking about Leah Thomas. I mean, it's a shame that this girl has to be second because he insists that he's a female and swims on the women's team. I think it's very unfair, and it takes away the scholarship opportunities for women.
If I may,
Yes.
I brought up Michelle because she said there's this argument that men are superior to women in this setting. And she was arguing that she could hold her own and didn't need us to argue that for her, that she competed just as well, if not better. That is why I brought up Michelle's testimony.
There's always an exception to the rule.
Well, but I thought, okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Senator Lang.
Senator Prentice, will you take a question?
Yes, I will.
So again, talking about biological males and biological females post-puberty,
Just checking.
do you agree with the medical science that says that unmedicated, so I want to be clear, we're talking about unmedicated, not people on puberty blockers, unmedicated males have a physiological advantage in general over a biological female? Do you agree with that medical science at all?
No.
You don't agree with that?
Wait a minute, I'm trying to make sure I'm not late.
Sorry, so I'll restate the question.
10:30 hearing, and I'm trying to make sure that.
So to set the framework for the question is about a biological male and the biological female, unmedicated, so they're not on puberty blockers and they're post-puberty, right? So past the age of 12. The vast majority of medical science says that biological men post-puberty have a physiological advantage over a biological female. Do you believe that science?
Biological males are stronger than biological females.
They have a physiological advantage
They have a
post-puberty.
physiological advantage. So I'm just gonna point back to our own Brandon Stater, who says that she had the biological advantage, that she was able to outrun the men. Like, and I haven't seen the science, but if you wanna put science in front of me, I'd be happy to assess the strength of the recommendations and the quality of the evidence. Sorry,
So-
that's how I look at it.
Right, so follow up. So again,
So I'm getting backed up against a hearing here, so let's.
okay, so again, we're talking about medical science, which has been clear across the board. I mean, you can just Google physiological advantages of males over females, and you'll get a litany of studies and surveys that show that, again, unmedicated, non-puberty blocked, post-pubescent males have a physiological advantage over females. And that, you think that litany of medical science says is wrong?
I have not personally reviewed that litany of medical science, and that article that I read from was not all about children that had had puberty blockers. It spoke from the pre-puberty blockers. So I'm happy to look at the literature, but I'm feeling a little pushed because I got to get upstairs
Okay.
to Representative Ladd's committee, and I'll be back.
I just want to make one clarifying statement. We talked about, transgenders aren't, any different than, other athletes. I think we're trying to lump in that these transgender athletes are, superhuman, amazing athletes versus others. When, you said it yourself, everyone comes in all shapes and different sizes. And I want to address the scholarship piece that, to my knowledge, and last time I checked, 0 scholarships have been awarded to these athletes going into higher education. So I think that's an argument that can't be made. And we also didn't hear from any athletic departments that were here, coaches that were here, that this is an actual issue. We don't even know how many students this affects or how many there are. And I just think this is a bill that targets this community, and it's unconstitutional.
So we wait for
We recess the executive, I guess.
to come back before we vote on this bill.
Yeah.
Or we could just vote on it with 3-1.
Want to take up the next one?
I guess we could.
No, because
No?
we want to put on consent.
What's that?
For Charity's bill?
No,
I-
the
Do
523.
you want to vote on this?
Well, we can
wanna
vote
wait
on it.
till- We want to wait till Sue's back.
Yeah, let's wait for Sue.
Okay. we'll hold off the vote on the 375 until the apprentice gets back. Let's look at 523. Public school library materials.
Madam Chair, I move OTP on Senate Bill 523,
Bill in here.
Second.
and I move Amendment 1298S, and I'd like to speak to it.
You may speak to your amendment.
Give me a second.
Madam Chair, can we
Second.
take a 5-minute recess and wait for just a second for Sue? If we're not gonna,
Before we read the bill,
yeah,
you think she'll be down in 5 minutes? We could do that. Sure.
Sure.
thank you.
Did you get this thing? They can hear me. No, we didn't do anything while you were gone.
We introduced 523, the motion to OTP, motion the amendment, and then we took a break.
No, we're gonna finish 375.
And we're going to finish this.
Yeah.
All right, so
So-
we're gonna hold 523 aside and finish 375 and then go back to it?
Yes, 375. So if there, I don't know, we can continue to discuss this back and forth, but is it gonna change anybody's opinion on how they're gonna vote at the end?
No.
Yes, no?
We can move the question.
Okay, can we vote on the amendment? 1295. It's the amendment to
Chair, we're voting on
375.
Senate Bill 375 and the adoption of Amendment 1295S, correct?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Are you voting?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What do you say, OTP? Is that what you said?
Second.
And there's a second. Any further discussion on this? Can we just vote on it? All those in favor?
Wait, wait.
Are we
Are we done
voting
with
on
the
the
amendment?
amendment now?
We're voting on the amendment.
Can we call how many are in favor for the amendment, and then we can proceed to
How
the
many are in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
That's 3. And opposing the amendment?
No.
That's 2, 3, 2 for the amendment. Now go back to the original one with the amendment. We have an OTP on it. How many vote in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And against?
Nope.
No, that's 3-2. Okay. That's 3-2 on Senate Bill 375.
Senator Ward, you going to take that out?
You want me to take, do you want to take it out? Do
I'd
you-
like you to take that.
I'll take it out, okay. Ward will take it out. Now we go to 523. I think. 523, yes.
Madam Chair, I think we're at a point where we've moved OTP on the bill, and then we've introduced the amendment, and I was just getting ready to speak on my amendment. We decided to take a recess so that Senator Prentice could get back and hear the discussion.
Okay, go ahead, Senator Lang, you can speak to the amendment.
So this bill's turned into a simple process bill. I worked with Christina Barrett, right? Christina, to adopt language. We took out some of the hyperbolic and more inflammatory language that were in the original bill, and we've turned it basically into a process bill. This bill strictly establishes a statewide process for parents to object to material in the library and set some timelines around the response that happens. So I'll just walk you through the process that as it occurs in this bill. A complaint is filed to a principal. Within 10 days of the complaint, the principal will either meet or communicate with the parent. Within 5 days of that, they'll make a determination. Within 15 days, they have to make a determination of the original complaint. Within 5 days of making a determination, they have to write a written decision saying, here's my determination, here's all my justification for my determination. From the point that decision is answered, the parent will have 20 days to appeal the decision to the local school board. The local school board will meet. The parent has in statute, the parent has an opportunity to present their case, but understand the appeal to be both directions. So in other words, if the principal chose to ban a book, to stop a book and take it out of the library, for whatever, because they feel it does meet the criteria for harmful to a minor, if a parent on the other side wants the book in there, they can appeal the principal's decision as well to the school board. So it works on both sides. So now if the aggrieved parent, person who filed a complaint doesn't like the decision, they can appeal, or a parent who didn't file a complaint but is a parent is in the school district, they can appeal the decision of the principal as well. The school board will then take that up, and the school board has to issue within 15 days their decision in writing as well. So it's a simple process bill to create a clear statewide process. Again, it has the support of the School Board Association. We took out the appeal to the State Board of Education, so it's just strictly a local matter and local decision with a simple process. So I think it's pretty clear. Again, it just becomes a process bill. When a parent objects, what's the process that they have to follow to object.
Thank you. Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Senator Ward, Chair Ward, and thank you, Senator Lang, for the work that you've done to move this from where it was to where it is, which is a local process. I am aware of a bill in the House that I think is very favorable to a local type of process. But here's the big question that I have in thinking about this is why isn't it, why are we making it, even though, I mean, you think it's simple and it's better than what we had previously, but why can't parents just say, I don't want my children to read these books, and tell the librarian, and then the librarian says when the child comes to the school, without getting the school board or the principals or anyone else involved, like I call up and I say, I don't want Phoebe to have access to these books. And so the librarian has a list, and if Phoebe comes in and says, you know what, your parents have restricted your use of this book. I mean, why aren't, so it seems like, and I saw, I mean, I'm just going to be completely transparent. 60 Minutes recently did a story on Beaufort, South Carolina, and how they navigated this. It was very interesting, but that's one of the things that they did, is they created a way so a parent could say, I don't want Tim to read that, to have access to this book. And that way, that one parent was making the decision for their child, not all of the children. And so I appreciate all the work that's been done in here. And I know we have an option coming over from the House, but it seems to me that we should focus more on that than creating this big elaborate process with all of these tight timelines, which is great in terms of responsiveness, but still, like, why can't this be between the parents and the librarian?
So again, for me, Madam Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Respond. So again, so we have a definition in statute about material that's objectionable to,
Right.
that is harmful to children, right? There's a definition with 4 criteria on there.
Right.
So the question is, if I will tell you, I served on the school board for 6 years, and I probably couldn't tell you what book was in the library at all, right? The school board doesn't get into that level of detail about what books are in there, right? And so even as a parent, I have 4 kids, all went through all the schools in Winnisquam. I couldn't tell you what books were in the library, right? Because as a parent, I wouldn't know. Only way I would know that if someone brought it to me and said, my God, do you see this? Right? When that happens, if a parent feels it meets that criteria, should they just ban it for themselves, or should they make the school aware and say, hey, you have a book that meets this, that I believe meets this statutory criteria of harmful to children. I think you should remove it. And don't you think there should be a process for that? That's what we're looking to do. Is that I agree. Most school boards don't know what's in their library. I don't think most principals know what's in their library until somebody brings it forward. What we're doing is establishing a process for a parent to bring something forward. And then it's up to the school to decide how it fits the curriculum, how it meets the criteria, whether it violates that state law that talks about a material harmful to a child. It's only about providing a process for that to occur.
Yeah.
Senator Prentice.
The school board might not know, but the librarians know. And the parents that have the concern about a particular book, why isn't it that between them and the librarian? And they, they can bring it to their friends and to others. But again, you're right, there is a law, the objectionable material, because I remember going through last year, was it last year or the year before, we were talking about parental bill of rights, all the things that already were in statute that we were just reciting and moving our way through. But what the argument was that parents are ultimately in charge. That was the argument presented. Now, there was language in there that was objectionable from a discrimination point of view. So we're going to set that aside. But there was this argument made that the parents were completely in charge. So what I'm saying to you here is, this is one of the times when I think the parents could easily go to the librarian and say, I got a problem about this. Why should I be making a decision about a book or starting up for that one of your children or Senator Fenton's children wants to read? I think it's up to that parent and up to that librarian, and we should endear a process that creates a direct line, not does this whole public vetting, which librarians, I think, already know how to manage these situations. And I think parents do too.
So again, I'm going to go back to, if a book meets the criteria for harmful to child, the school has an obligation and a risk factor there, the liability that can potentially occur when it's brought to their attention that needs to be addressed. I'm not sure we want the librarian making that big determination, right? That's a determination made by the principal or the school board that says there's a potential liability because a parent thinks that this is a harmful material to a child by definition of statute, and we need to take it seriously and address it. So again, this creates a process. Doesn't mean it's a process bill. It creates a process for a parent to bring that to the attention of the principal, to allow that potential liability be assessed and determined and what the risk is, and move forward. I'm not sure I'm comfortable letting school librarians make decisions that could impact the entire school district.
But I have something to say before we allow you to
Please
speak.
go ahead. Thank you, Chair Ward.
I'm just saying the librarian is an employee of the school district, I'm assuming. And to put that responsibility on the librarian, I think it's maybe not be the right thing to do, because then we have to have other guardrails in place. And I think that the process that is outlined here, it goes through that the ultimate that the principal of the school is responsible for it. Now you may
Chair
speak.
Ward, my primary point is that the parent decides that they don't want their child to have access to the book, and they communicate that with the librarian. And that the librarian doesn't make the decision for that parent or any other parents. It responds to the parent who brings the concerns. My comment about that school boards versus librarians is that the librarians have, that's their work is in the libraries, and the parents and the school boards, you're right, they're not always in that corner of education, but the parent is making the decision and bringing it to the librarian. It's, I know it's like an unwinnable argument. I prefer that this is a local process, but I do think that we are, we're skating right up on that thin line of letting one parent make a decision about, a concern that they have that's going to impact, other parents and other kids when there's a straight line to this. And I just want to take the straight line.
But
That's my
The
preference.
parent makes a decision, but you're asking the librarian to enforce it. And that's my issue.
Like they don't do it now?
I have no idea.
Sorry, I just totally spoke out of turn. Sorry, Senator
I
Ward.
don't use the children's library. Did you want to say something?
I do, yes.
Fenton has something to say.
I appreciate the discussion. And I like my colleague said, there is a House bill that addresses a lot of this that I think we should take a hard look at. But my Senator Lang also mentioned these harmful materials, which I don't believe they're defined in statute. And when we're saying only one individual is making this decision, the school principal or designee is determining what is harmful to minors. And I don't see where that definition is on what is harmful to minors. I think that's a huge gaping hole in this bill. And also have an issue with lines 19 through 21, where the school board shall make the challenge material available to the public by placing a copy of the work instructions describing how to access the work at the front reception desk of the school building where the work was found. I don't understand why that language is in there. It just invites problems, in my opinion. Now the receptionist is going to have this harmful material at her desk, and angry parents are going to her to access this material. This bill, I think we should take a hard look at the House bill versus this, because there's a lot of undefined things in this bill.
Well, we will get the House bill. I'm sure. Once it passes the House, we'll get it, so we can take a look at it. Senator Lang.
So a couple things I want to take up. So if you look at the original bill and you look at page 2, Roman numeral 2, that definition is actually a restatement of a definition about what is considered material that is harmful to minors. That's a restatement of another piece of law that's already in statute. So we have in statute 4 criteria, and it says for the purpose, material is harmful to a minor when taken as a whole, it predominantly appeals to prurient, shameful, or morbid interest of minors. The material depicts or describes nudity, sexual conduct, sexual excitement, or sadomasochism abuse in a manner patently offensive to the prevailing standard of adult community with respect to as suitable for minors. The material lacks serious literary, scientific, medical, artistic, political value for minors. The material is inappropriate for the age of a minor for whom it is being made available. So that's already in statute somewhere else. And that's the standard. But again, I'm going to go back to this strictly requires where a parent feels that there's a book that meets that criteria, that they make the school aware of it, either first through the principal and then through the school board if there's an appeal. The reason for putting it out at the
Front desk.
out at the receptionist desk is because if citizens have a question, they could go to the school and see what book they're talking about, read the passage that they're talking about. There's an availability for people who don't necessarily have that book to be able to go look at what that book is about. And it makes it, again, more transparent for the public to be able to see, have the public be able to see that book and understand what the conversation is about. So that's the reason why that piece was put in there, was again about transparency and allowing the public to review material that otherwise they may not have access to until the determination is made.
Any more discussion on this?
Yeah, yes. Sorry, Senator Lang. Senator Ward, I'm misbehaving today. I just want to wrap up and say that I'm in no way in favor of objectionable material as you described it, being in the hands of children. But I think that's up to the parents, and I just want to draw that straight line. We've got this whole process, or the parent can say to the librarian, no. That would be my preference. So I don't want this to be misinterpreted anyway, that I think that material in books, in libraries, available to children, is okay. I want to be clear on that. I think that's a place, I don't know if we can all agree. I'd like to think we could, but I just think that there's a different way to get at this, is my opinion. That's all.
Senator Gendro.
Just a question for you, Senator Prentice. Would you agree that curiosity could get the best of some of those students? So although they had no permission to check that book out, who's to say that they wouldn't take it off the shelf, sneak in a corner somewhere, or go to the table and start reading through it? And the parents would never know. So those are the types of things that we want to avoid. I mean, kids being kids, the curiosity, the whatever would, and I know we're saying what ifs, but
Yeah, we are.
we know human nature. So if one boy says to another boy, hey, have you seen this book on the shelf? And boy says, no, but my mom says I can't take it out. That's all right. We can go take a look at it. It's still harmful without having it checked out.
I think that human nature is, Senator Gendro, thank you for the question. I think human nature does play in, but at the same time, we are dancing up on the line of banning books. We have to be very careful in a democracy of where we're going. I think this is between parents and the librarians. That's my position on it. And I don't want harmful material in the schools either. I just don't want, I think the what ifs, we could go down many what ifs. I've said what I'm going, I've made my position clear, and thank you for the opportunity to speak further.
Any further
Just
discussion?
one clarification, and Senator Lang, I appreciate you referencing that statute, but this bill does not reference that statute at all. So we're operating without a definition as to what's harmful.
Are you looking at the?
I'm looking at the amendment, especially in page 2, line 2. Subject of the complaint is harmful to minors, age appropriate, otherwise offensive or inappropriate. So we don't have a definition of any of this or referencing the statute.
So if I can, I'll just answer it in this way, that, again, if a court is reviewing this for whatever reason, we have to go through a court process. If the court's reviewing this, they're first going to go look at the statutory construction and the definition, and what is the definition of harmful to a minor, and they'll find the statute that we already have on the books that list that. Absent that even being in place, they'll go to precedent, which again, those four items have already been established in court precedent as well. And the last thing they would go to is the plain meaning of the text. What is the plain reading of the bill, and whether or not material is harmful to a minor? And so I think that they wouldn't even get past the first section, which is absent a definition, they would go look for a statutory definition, they would find it. And what New Hampshire believes what is harmful to minors, and they'll find that. And again, if somehow they missed it there, they're going to find it in precedent, where we also state in court precedent what is harmful to minors as well, in various court decisions.
Any further
Just follow up,
discussion?
that doesn't, what is plain reading of inappropriate or age appropriate? I mean,
Again, you're first going to get hit with the, it's going to hit the first wall, which is, do we have a statutory definition of harmful to minors? The material that is harmful to minors, and the answer is yes. And they're going to use that definition.
we're assuming what the courts will do?
I know what the courts will do, again, because that's their process, right? I looked up the process on another issue, and when a definition is not defined, how does a court deal with it? And the answer is, first they go to statutory construction, then the secondary thing they go to past precedent, and the third thing they do is go to direct meaning. We have a definition of this in our statute: materials that are harmful to a minor. It's those 4 criteria we said, and that criteria has also been identified in past precedent. So you never get past hurdle 1 or hurdle 2, because the courts would adopt those and use that for the definition purposes.
For clarification, I think it's very dangerous to assume what the courts would do. And in passing legislation, I think we have to be very careful as to get it right.
Okay. If there are no other discussions on this bill, can we vote on the amendment? All those in favor of Amendment 1295? Aye, there's 3. Against?
No.
2, there's 3, 2. Okay. Now take the amendment, the underlying bill. We have an ought to pass on the underlying bill. And the final vote is aye, 3 ayes and
No.
2 noes. And Senator Lang will take this one up. Okay. Thank you. Now we have what, 524?
Madam Chairman, the interim study on 524.
Second,
Interim study has been proposed, so for 524, do we have a discussion on it?
We're fine. You can go ahead. We're
Any
okay.
discussion on it, on 524? Ready to vote on it? We have interim study has been proposed. How many for interim study?
Aye.
4, 5? 5, 0. Who wants to take this one up?
I'll take it out. I'll move consent. Oh, actually, I won't.
You want to take it out, or you want to put it on consent?
I'll take it out.
Okay,
I don't want to.
okay.
Language 524 is now 375. And that is the only reason that I would support moving into interim study or would prefer the next phase to legislate, because, but I've already spoken on the language that's in 375. I think that just needs to be clear for everybody.
Very good. Now we move to, what is it, 596. And we just got an amendment an hour ago, maybe an hour and a half ago.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to or interim study.
I'll second that.
Motion.
Interim study on 596.
Do you want to speak to that, or we just got the amendment?
So we have an amendment to 596. Amendment number 1, 2, 3, 5.
Madam Chair,
1325.
if I could speak to.
You may speak to the amendment.
So, so the amendment is a significant change, besides the fact that it's a $375,000 appropriation to administer a program that already exists within the Department of Health and Human Services. So I'm not sure why we're expending more funds, and there's no one here to explain the bill. I'm more than willing to speak to people between now and when it hits the floor and see about maybe overturning an interim study, but on its face with the appropriation and the definition changes and no one here to speak to it, I think an interim study is the appropriate move. And then between now and whenever it hits the Senate floor, if someone wants to come to us and explain it to us, we can always change our vote on the Senate floor.
Okay, that's fair enough. Senator Prentice, did you want?
I just, thank you. So I mean, it is an established program, but we've been talking about, not so much it here, but, we talked about it, Health and Human Services. We've talked about it on the Senate floor. I talk about it in my community all of the time. Child care scholarship programs. Like, why would we not want to pass a bill? And, although I think every penny matters, when I see $375,000, like if I was, a city councilor, I might be a little more like, ooh, but to further to expand and administer this program, I guess, and I would like to hear from Senator Ricciardi. I just think time-wise, we're up against a wall. I don't want to take anything away from the ability to advance all the solutions for childcare.
Well, remember when we heard this bill presented, the thing that was missing was the definition for the disabled child.
Right,
And that's what we're looking for.
It's-
And I looked at the old bill, and $375,000 is not even in the original bill, which made me curious, where did that thing come from?
So disability, may I?
Yes.
So she did, Senator Ricciardi did address disability and special needs. And then I can't speak to where exactly the bill, the $375,000 has come from, but what I can speak to as a legislator is that between the time I've introduced a bill, been in committee, and been squeaking towards the floor, I have made changes because people have come to me and said, you need to put an appropriation in this. You need to change this cost. It doesn't include this isn't going to do what you want to do unless you make these changes. So I don't think that that's unusual. And I feel bad, so I just think that Senator Ricciardi did what we asked her to do. I think that the child care scholarship program, is a high priority. So I don't want to put this aside in a way that could be hurtful.
Senator Lang?
So again, it's why I made an interim study motion and not an ITL motion. I agree. And my goal is that if they come back, we hear information between now and when it hits the floor. We've done it before. We overturned the committee recommendation to adopt an amendment and pass the bill.
You are correct.
But I can't pass this on its face, and we're up against a timeline crunch, and we have to do something. So an interim study is why I made the motion.
I mean, I do understand that, Senator Lang. Sometimes interim study can mean a polite way of saying no.
It's also polite way to say it has merit. We just don't
Yeah,
have
so
enough
that is, I
detail.
don't want it to be misinterpreted. So let this go forward on the record that I'll support this because we will talk to Senator Ricciardi and get this fixed so that we can politely, we can move forward in a positive way. Thank you. I'm aware.
Any more discussion on it?
I would just say, if the intent is to work on the bill, I'm okay with that. I don't want to see this bill die because, New Hampshire is seeing more and more high needs children. And I think New Hampshire child care centers lack the resources to provide, dedicated staff for these children. And, we're seeing more behavioral needs and developmental needs. And this bill is well intended and well needed, in my opinion. So I really do not want to see this bill disappear. And if the intent is to work on it, I'm okay with an interim study with the handshake agreement that we are going to see this through.
And if I may, Senator Ward, one of the largest, if not the largest, childcare facility in the city of Lebanon could really benefit from.
I'm sure they would.
Yeah, that's.
And there's no question.
And their, certainly their director talks to me all the time.
Okay. There are several worthwhile points in it, but there are some things that we just need to find out really what it is. And I think interim study would be a good choice. We can always overturn that without any problems, which is one of the advantages with going on the floor.
Madam Chair, Brian Clark, I'm an attorney from the Department of Health and Human Services.
Yes.
Here, sir.
Did you want to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just. Hi, attorney. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm attorney Brian Clark for the Department of Health and Human Services.
and I'm available to answer any questions on this bill if you have them. I just have to say that the original bill didn't have the $375,000 appropriations because it was believed by the that federal funds could be used. However, that is not the case. And so to expand the definition of child's in need with significant special needs and get the differential payment to child care providers, it would require an appropriation.
So are you saying that it's not federally funded at this point?
So the child care scholarship does involve federal funds. However, this particular protected class that adds a differential, like an increased payment to the regular payment that would be given. So the child care differential is an increased payment for if a child care provider has a child receiving child care scholarship and that child has significant special needs. There's like a recognition that child would take more time and effort on the part of the child care provider. And so that's what the differential payment is. And so if we were to expand that, we would need general funding. However, the underlying program does have federal funds.
So that's an additional.
Yes.
appropriation. Okay. That- did you-
So again, doesn't the federal guideline already provide differential aid for a special needs child for the purpose of the child care scholarship program?
Yeah, yes. However, this is to expand it beyond the because currently a child would need a diagnosis, and what this legislation is seeking to do is there are many kids that are at risk of social emotional delay but haven't received a formal diagnosis yet because the waiting list to see a specialist is a year or two long. I'm sure others would know more. And so what the bill was seeking to address is to recognize the kids who are at risk but haven't gone in to see the specialist yet for the diagnosis.
Okay. I still
Who
think we
would,
need
who would make
study.
the definition of that risk? Who makes that determination?
Okay, so thank you. So there are several assessment tools that we will be identifying. They were in the existing legislation. So the department would be adopting rules regarding what assessments tools could be used and to what extent, like how many standard deviations would need to be indicated for a child to be deemed needing significant special needs.
So a non-medical person would be making some sort of professional diagnosis without a medical degree on whether or not a child is in significant delay, and then we're going to allocate more funds for them based on a.
No, it would have to be signed by a. We do have authority in the legislation to designate that it could require a licensed professional to sign off on it. I think the language I'd point to is that we'd require a licensed treating clinician on line 19.
So it looks like there's three criteria in there, right? So it's an either or. So you have the child's child care provider, a licensed treating technician, or other licensed professional, as reasonably identified by the department, shall verify.
No, it was,
On line 23.
yeah. So,
And again, it's also on line 19 as well. Child care provider, licensed treating clinician, or other approved professional.
right. So the department will be adopting rules as to who would qualify as a licensed treating clinician or other approved licensed professional under this legislation.
But the child care provider could also be the one who
So
verifies.
it requires the child care provider to request it and a licensed treating clinician or other approved professional to sign off on it.
So those are rules that you will be proposing?
Yes, before January, if this under this current version of the legislation.
Well, it seems to me that there are a lot of things going on here, and I think we need to take a good look at it. So I would go with interim study. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Are you ready to vote on interim study? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? So we have 5-0 for interim study. Now we have the bill.
Well, we can take it off if we want to do something. Otherwise, just put it on consent. Move consent.
No, we have the underlying bill plus the amendment. So how do you vote on that?
Well, we didn't introduce the amendment,
We don't need to touch the
Yeah.
amendments. Yeah, yes. we would go.
so we can just vote.
Did you want to put that on consent? Okay. Consent?
Aye.
How you vote?
Aye.
5-0 for consent.
And I'll take it out just in case.
The what?
I'll take it out just in case it gets pulled from consent.
Okay. Well, I think that completes what we had to do today. The finance department will be happy to get all the last bills in, so.
Move to come out of exec session. Second.
So all those in favor of getting out of executive session?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yay.
So now we have these done.
Is that the last Senate bill?
That's it.
He's still in the building.
And apparently, we're not gonna vote on any of the House bills until after the 11th.